Hello, and thanks for listening to the first episode of Jake's Political Take. Today we will be discussing the Conservative Party leadership race. I will go over the main candidates in the race, their position on current key issues, and at the end I will provide my opinion. Alright, so let's just get right into it. At the time of the production of this episode, there were 8 candidates vying for leadership of the Conservative Party. During this episode, I'm only going to focus on the 4 candidates that I believe have the best shot at winning the race: Leslyn Lewis, Pierre Poilievre, Jean Charest, and Patrick Brown. So, just to give a quick recap of events that preceded the official start of the Conservative Party leadership race, in February of 2022, members of the Conservative caucus voted to remove former leader Erin O'Toole as leader of the party. Members of the Conservative Party have become quite dissatisfied with O'Toole's leadership after having lost the September 2021 election. O'Toole had taken the party in a new direction, sort of distancing himself from the label of social conservative and moving more towards the center of the political spectrum, hoping that that would result in an electoral victory in September 2021. Obviously, that didn't work, and the Liberals under Justin Trudeau were re-elected. And so party members have become quite dissatisfied with his approach, and so he was ousted from the party. Shortly after this, longtime MP Candice Bergeon was declared the interim leader of the party. I'm going to discuss the candidates in order of the date that they announced their candidacy. So first we have Pierre Poilievre, who announced his candidacy almost immediately after Erin O'Toole was officially ousted as leader of the party. Poilievre has been a member of Parliament since 2004, and he has represented the Carleton area in Ottawa. In Stephen Harper's government, he held prominent cabinet positions. While the Conservatives were in opposition under both Andrew Scheer and Erin O'Toole, Poilievre regained prominence as a shadow minister of finance, particularly when he was questioning members of the Liberal government over the so-called WE scandal in 2020, in the summer of 2020, when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Finance Minister Bill Morneau were accused of acting improperly by not recusing themselves from cabinet discussions about using the WE charity as a mechanism in which to distribute grants to students. Although Poilievre originally voted against same-sex marriage when it came up for vote in the early 2000s, he has since come out in favor of it. And the reason why I'm discussing this, because it may seem as though it's a non-issue, and in reality it is, but the reason why I'm discussing this I will make clear a little later when I go over my opinion on the race. So, next up we have Leslyn Lewis. Leslyn Lewis first gained prominence within the Conservative Party, and actually arguably nationally, when she ran for the Conservative Party leadership in the 2020 race, which Erin O'Toole ended up winning. To the surprise of many, she placed third. She currently represents the federal riding of Haldimand-Norfolk. In the 2020 leadership convention, she portrayed herself as a social conservative. She advocated for the repeal of the carbon tax, and she also promised to repeal Bill C-16, which added gender expression and gender identity as legitimate grounds for discrimination to the criminal code. She describes herself as being pro-life and has proposed banning sex-selective abortions. She is also the only candidate as of date to be endorsed by the Campaign Life Coalition, a prominent Christian pro-life advocacy group in Canada. Jean Charest was next to announce his candidacy on March 9th. Now, Jean Charest's name might not be known to a lot of younger people out there, but his name is actually quite prominent in Canadian political circles. Jean Charest was first elected to Parliament as a member of the Progressive Conservative Party in 1984. He served in Prime Minister Brian Mulroney's cabinet. He is perhaps most well known for being the Premier of Quebec from 2003 to 2012. Jean Charest is largely seen as a centrist option for the party. He has been vocal about his support for a climate tax and for building pipelines to export Canadian oil. Jean Charest is also opposed to Quebec's Bill 21, which bans certain employees in the provincial sector from wearing religious symbols. Charest is both in favor of same-sex marriage and is pro-choice. And finally, we have Patrick Brown. Patrick Brown is probably most well known for being the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario from 2015 to 2018. In 2018, he was forced to resign due to accusations of sexual misconduct, which he denies. And I would also like to add that Brown sued CTV News, who was the original news outlet to report it, and in a settlement, CTV apologized to Brown for the reporting on the case. He is also known for serving as mayor of Brampton, which he was elected in 2018 to do, and which he currently is in the position of. Brown has not taken a firm position on the carbon tax, but he has stated that conservatives must be willing to accept and tackle the problem of climate change. Brown is very vocal about his opposition to Quebec's Bill C-21, and like Charest, Brown is largely viewed as a centrist option for the party. So I'd like to go over a little bit about how the campaign has been thus far, and it has actually been fairly nasty, particularly with attacks coming from both the Poilievre camp and from the Charest camp, who are arguably, and in my opinion, the two main contenders in a race. So just to give you a bit of an example of this, from the Charest camp, in an interview on CTV, Jean Charest discredited Pierre Poilievre's ability to lead because of Pierre's support for the Freedom Convoy, which took over Ottawa in February 2022. He said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, that a leader cannot break the laws which he hopes to uphold. Now, as I said, it hasn't only been from the Charest camp. Some of the attacks from Pierre Poilievre have also been a bit nasty towards Jean Charest. For instance, he has been constantly accusing Charest, or at the very least implying that he is a liberal. So I'd like to go over a little bit about this point that Charest is a liberal, because while there is some technical truth to that, it's not really accurate to say that he's a liberal. And this has not only been from Pierre Poilievre, this has been, I've seen accusations online from not only leaders, but just everyday people, and I don't think they quite understand the full political history behind it. So just to give a quick recap, while Charest was Premier of Quebec, he did run with the Liberal Party in Quebec. However, at the time, the Quebec Liberal Party was a broad coalition of politicians of various political stripes who were federalist. Federalists meaning that they support Quebec remaining a province of Canada rather than seceding from the country. Also, the Liberal Party in Quebec has no official affiliation with the Federal Liberal Party. So while technically, yes, he was a member of the Quebec Liberal Party while Premier, he is not really a liberal. He is widely viewed as a fiscal conservative. And the Liberal Party in Quebec at the time was just a banner that Federalists ran under. So examining the campaign thus far a little bit, no matter what you think of either candidate, it is not good for a party to have leadership hopefuls who are bashing each other. After a leader is chosen, the leader has the job of unifying party members behind him or her. Now, obviously, that job can be quite challenging if during the leadership you are bashing your opponent. In 2017, we saw the consequences of this. Andrew Scheer won. However, Maxime Bernier, the runner-up, left the Conservative Party to start his own party, the People's Party of Canada. So, Pierre Poilievre's campaign has gained a lot of momentum. However, I think there is one key issue with how his campaign has been stylized. Immediately after O'Toole was ousted from the Conservative Party, when Poilievre announced his intention to run for leader of the Conservative Party, he stylized his campaign as if he was running for prime minister. However, there is one practical hurdle that he must overcome before he is actually running for prime minister, and that is he must win the Conservative Party leadership race. Now, because of this momentum, Pierre has done a really good job at courting people who otherwise would not be interested in politics to his campaign. However, I often wonder if the people that he has courted to his campaign, who otherwise might not be interested in politics, are actually aware that before he can run for prime minister, they must first obtain Conservative Party membership so that they can choose him to be leader of the party. Now, Poilievre's campaign is something that I find to be quite interesting. The momentum behind it, some of the tactics he has used, and so I do plan on doing a separate episode as we get closer to the Conservative Party convention in September on his campaign. So, as I alluded to a bit earlier, realistically, I think that this will be a competition between Pierre Poilievre and Jean Charest. They are the two most well-known and experienced candidates in the race. But from a political point of view, I want to get a bit into why other candidates run for the leadership race if in reality they don't have a realistic chance at winning. So I'm going to go specifically into Patrick Brown and Leslyn Lewis. So one reason why lesser-known candidates might run, in spite of the fact that they know that they probably won't win, is to increase their name recognition. Now, for instance, Patrick Brown. Brown has been a lifelong admirer of Jean Charest, and they are ideologically very closely aligned. When the leadership race initially kicked off and Jean Charest and Patrick Brown announced that they would be contending for the leadership, there were rumors in political circles, and I read it in a few newspapers, that their leadership campaigns had some sort of understanding where they wouldn't attack one another. Now, I believe that Patrick Brown is running with the hope that if Jean Charest wins, he may be given a high-level cabinet position. I included Patrick Brown as one of the main candidates in this race because his name is widely known and because I believe he is an up-and-comer in the party. Now, similarly, I believe that Leslyn Lewis is running to increase her own name recognition. However, I also believe that she is running as a statement to both the elites of the Conservative Party and to whichever candidate ends up winning the leadership race. And that statement is about social conservative values and the fact that the social conservative wing of the party cannot be completely ignored. I included her in this episode because she placed third in the last leadership race and has become quite a prominent name, as I mentioned earlier, within political circles, and because I believe she's the most prominent social conservative candidate in the race. So, now I'm going to give you my take on the Conservative Party leadership. Now, the former leader, Erin O'Toole, believed that if the Conservatives wished to form government, they had to move more towards the center of the political spectrum. I tend to agree with O'Toole on this point. Canada is not a Conservative Party. Now, the base of the Conservative Party has a large social conservative element. I don't think they're the majority of the party, but they are the most vocal. Canadians, however, are not socially conservative. That is why many candidates, like Erin O'Toole did, when they are campaigning for the leadership of the Conservative Party, they tend to campaign more to the right so that they can appeal to that social conservative element of the party. However, when they actually win the leadership and they run in an election, they move more towards the center and to try and broaden their appeal to more Canadians. However, that's why the party was unhappy with O'Toole, because when he switched to broaden his appeal, many within the Conservative Party felt as though he betrayed what he had said during the leadership race. So, in order to prove my point about Canadians not being socially conservative by and large, I'm going to look at two important social issues. I have some polls here. 2017 Ipsos poll found that 77% of Canadians are pro-choice when it comes to abortion. And another poll from Ipsos, conducted last year, showed that a similar number of Canadians, 75%, are in support of same-sex marriage. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because the Liberals and NDP have often tried to use these two issues as a strategy to hamstring the Conservatives and distract voters from the actual issues. Now, this strategy has worked in the past. This strategy helped prevent former Conservative leader Andrew Scheer from forming government. He was vocally opposed both to abortion rights and gay marriage. However, he stated that he would not take any legislative action on either issues. Harper was also this way, and the Conservatives have really tried to stick to this message since Harper because it worked with Harper. Harper was not in favor of same-sex marriage, and he was not he was pro-life, and he was outward in that, but he never introduced any legislation to restrict abortion rights. He did introduce legislation early in his tenure to abolish same-sex marriage in Canada, but that failed, and after that, he didn't touch the issue. However, now Canadians want somebody who is openly pro-choice and in favor of same-sex marriage. So Erin O'Toole did well, in my opinion, in this field. He prevented other parties from using it as a wedge issue right away by coming out in front and saying that he was pro-choice and that he supported same-sex marriage. Now, if the Conservatives wish to win re-election and to form government again, they have to position themselves as a center-right party. They have to have a leader that unequivocally states that they are both pro-gay marriage and pro-choice. They have to have a candidate that states that they believe in scientifically backed climate change and propose a legitimate plan to combat it. They also have to do more to reach out to racialized communities, something which they have had trouble doing in the past. Now, I don't think that the Conservatives are a racist party. However, a lot of the public perceives them as such, and there are numerous reasons for this. I think a large reason for this is that a lot of Canadians conflate the Republican Party in the US with the Conservative Party in Canada, and really they are not anything alike. The Republican Party is much more farther to the right than the Conservative Party here is. And while, yes, the Conservative Party here has a social conservative element, it is nowhere near as big and as the Republican Party in the US. However, even though I don't think the Conservative Party is a racist party, as the saying goes, perception is reality. If the wider public believes that they are a racist party, they must take action to combat this view. I think that a lot of Canadians support a view of fiscal conservatism. If the Conservatives wish to form government, they must focus on economic conservatism rather than social issues. If the Conservatives wish to win, once again, they have to elect somebody who is pro-choice, pro-LGBT rights, and somebody who will unequivocally state they believe in human-caused climate change. They must elect someone whose primary focus is fiscal conservatism. Now, the opposing view to my argument would be that the Conservatives also have to try to appeal to the social conservative wing of the party. I disagree with this. I don't think that the social conservative wing is very significant within the party. I think that they are a vocal minority, meaning that this segment is the loudest, and there are some prominent leaders in the party who identify as social conservatives. However, the majority of the conservative electorate is not socially conservative. I think that if you were to do a poll among Canadians who identify themselves as conservatives, you would find that a majority are pro-choice and an even larger majority are in favor of same-sex marriage. So, while they are allowed, I don't think the social conservative element is very significant within Canadians who would be willing to vote conservative. Canadians are not happy with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government. He has twice lost a popular vote to the Conservatives, and he is now leading a second minority government. Canadians keep voting for the Liberals because they don't see a viable option to replace him. If the Conservatives elect a candidate who is truly a center-right fiscal conservative, I believe that dissatisfied Liberal supporters will decide to vote Conservative. The social conservatives will simply toe the line. They realize that the Conservatives' ultimate aim must be to remove the Liberals from office. So, I want to go in a bit about why I'm covering this, because leadership races happen all the time in Canadian politics. However, I think one key difference with the current Conservative Party leadership race is that this will be a momentous defining race. Not only for the Conservative Party, but for Canadian politics in general. So, to contextualize what I mean, I have to give you a bit of a brief recap of recent Canadian political history. So, prior to 2003, there was no unified Conservative Party in Canada. There were two main national Conservative parties, the Progressive Conservative Party, which was more center-right, and the Canadian Alliance, which was considered to be further to the right on the political spectrum than the Progressive Party. In 2003, the two parties merged to create the Conservative Party of Canada. So, in 2006, Stephen Harper, the leader of the newly unified Conservative Party, was elected prime minister with a minority government. He would stay in power until 2015 when he was defeated by Justin Trudeau's Liberals. Now, I believe that this split between the progressive element and the more farther right element within the party is beginning to emerge again. Under Harper, the more progressive or center-leaning conservatives were willing to remain quiet because the party was in power. And also, Harper seemed to do a very good job at sort of unifying the party, and they haven't had a leader since then that has been able to do that because they keep on electing members who are socially conservative to lead the party, and they have continually lost, this in spite of the numerous scandals that the Trudeau government has faced. And I think because of this, the progressive element within the party is increasingly becoming frustrated. I think that this leadership race will chart the future course for the Conservative Party. There was actually an article recently in a newspaper, the Toronto Star, about how there are some rumoring among Conservative Party officials that there could be, if the Conservatives elect a far-right social conservative again, there could be an actual split with possibly MPs resigning and stuff, and maybe even the creation of a new, more center-right party, just because of how frustrated more moderate conservatives are becoming with the party. And as conservatives begin to receive their ballots and begin to think about who they're going to vote for to be their leader in the coming weeks, I think that they have to think about this. They have to think about somebody who can not only unite members behind them, but they also have to think about electability because, as I said, frankly, a social conservative leader is not electable in Canada. There has to be a center-right leaning leader of the party in order for the Conservatives to win. Thank you for listening to this episode of Jake's Political Take. I hope that even if you didn't agree with my insight, you found what I had to say interesting and informative. If you'd like to reach me, you may do so at my email, jakepoliticaltake@gmail.com, which is all one word, on my Twitter, Jake's Politicals, or on my Instagram, @Jake's Political Take. I plan on covering the Conservative leadership race more as we get closer to the date of the convention in September. Please stay tuned for new episodes of Jake's Political Take.